Alright, let's get this over with. Alrighty then, my royal chums. It is I, Daniel. You may call it the Pop Culture Dude. And after a couple of days of being a little bit late after making a couple of videos on this channel, now I can finally make the time to review the Zack Snyder Justice League 4-hour cut, exclusively and only available on HBO Max for those who live in the United States. If you don't have HBO Max, good luck of not being spoiled, because don't worry, this will be a non-spoiler review. I'm not going to give away big major plot details, but I'm definitely going to tell you what are my personal thoughts of Zack Snyder's vision of Justice League and how is it, in my personal opinion, bigger, better, and way more improved than the theatrical cut of the Joss Whedon cut, aka Justice League. But other than that, let me start off by saying the Zack Snyder vision of Justice League, I gotta give credit to people who adore Zack Snyder's work in the DCEU, and for those of you who are not fan of the recent DC Extended Universe movies, if you don't really like them, it's a very fair way to feel, because I'm not a big fan of all of them myself. I mean, there's some that I do like. I did like Shazam, I did like Aquaman, Wonder Woman, like, for those type of DCU movies, but some others like Suicide Squad and Birds of Prey, not so much. And then there's some where I'm like, okay, this one was alright, but it wasn't terrible, it wasn't great. That's like Man of Steel. But now we actually get to see that if you don't know much about the story about the original cut of Justice League, obviously Warner Brothers wants to release Justice League the exact same year as Wonder Woman in 2017. But after, this is going to sound sad, where Zack Snyder's daughter committed herself suicide, where he left the project, and guess who they hired to take care of the production? Joss Whedon, who directed the first two Avengers movies. And after that, they decided to cut the runtime, change the scenes. Joss Whedon just changed Zack Snyder's vision. It just became a little bit more cheesier, goofier. The CGI doesn't work out well, including the sexual jokes with Wonder Woman. We shall not speak of that. But in a way that we know that the original theatrical cut Justice League was an abomination of a Frankenstein done wrong. And basically that's why that movie wasn't considered to be good. And now, thanks to the fan campaign, and thanks for everyone by saying, we want the Snyder Cut, Warner Brothers, release the Snyder Cut, which trends the meme of release the director's cut. But after when Zack Snyder and AT&T eventually made that presentation, boom, ever since November of 2017 to March 2021, we finally got Zack Snyder's vision of Justice League. And when it comes to comic book movies and Hollywood in general, I think it's very important that when you're hiring a filmmaker, run that filmmaker's creative vision for whether he or she plans for what they think of, for what their cape flick comic book movie should be. Let that filmmaker be in full control and don't interfere. If you want to scrap out because of the runtime, fine, but since this is only just a 4-hour movie, yes, longer than Avengers Endgame, it shouldn't matter at this point. But either way, this movie has 6 parts, like it's kind of like a mini-series, but it isn't, and it also has an epilogue. Anyway, I'm just going to talk about the parts. I'm not going to tell you what happens in it because, spoiler alert, but for part 6, from part 1 to 6, I'm just going to talk about how do I feel about this. Okay, part 1, it's not really a big spoiler, it's pretty much, if you've seen the last version of Justice League, it's pretty much the same, except the scenes are a bit extended, a little way too long, and there's a little bit some unnecessary moments where it just becomes a little more slow motion and too much exotic CGI. I mean, that's what I've seen in Zack Snyder's earlier movies like 300, Watchmen, or Sucker Punch, and even the Guardians of Galaxy movie, there's going to be a bunch of slow motion shots, and you are going to see a lot of that in the movie, so that became a little bit more bothering. There's a little bit of religious takes on the DC characters. I'm like, come on, they're just comic book characters. Stop treating them like they're holy gods from heaven, which they aren't. They're fictional comic book characters that has that human grounded elements of level of relatability to them if you connect with these DC characters ever since the comics. Heck, you can even see my frame in the background where you see the Justice League members, even the Looney Tunes dress as the Justice League members as Funko Pops, except for Daffy because he's Duck Dodgers. But I'm going a little bit off topic. Part 1 was kind of hard to sit through by saying, okay, I'm not really a big fan of this. I kind of like the pacing for what the original cut would have had, and to me it just goes straight on to the point. But they did cut some important scenes. Part 2, however, it started out becoming decent. I'm like, okay, we have a pretty decent setup about what's the main source of the plot, who are the villains, how are the characters going to be interacted. There's some side characters from Wonder Woman's story to the Flash to Cyborg to Aquaman, which I will get to the characters, but I'm just talking about my thoughts of all 6 parts of the movie. But technically part 2 has a small, it goes to a decent pace. It doesn't go all the way to be great, but it has a decent pacing. But part 3, it goes very interesting when it comes to the characters. And now I'm going to talk about the characters. What are my thoughts on the Justice League members themselves? First and foremost, let's start off the Cape Crusader himself, Batman. And I gotta say, Ben Affleck's Batman, it's a pretty unique take on it. He's basically Bruce Wayne, but more experience of being the Batman for 20 years. And even though Batman v Superman wasn't that great, but I will admit there were some really badass action sequences where he just takes him down with his fighting combat skills, and you will get to see that. And even though my biggest problem, yes, he kills, but in this, don't worry, this cut, he does kill some parademon creatures that are from Steppenwolf, which we will get to the villain. But either way, it's not more of the killing human beings rule, like the problems that Batman v Superman is. But he still has some Ultra Maxi sequences. His suit looks pretty iconic. That remind me of the Dark Knight Returns comic books, and they did pay a homage to that in Batman v Superman. But I definitely in this version, he's not being jokey or eventually just be oh, I broke the lips or anything like that. Batman is not a joke in the last cut. This one, I can actually take him a little bit more seriously, even though there's some points of his voice just goes a little bit off when he shouts out, no, don't do this. And I'm okay, I think it kind of went auto-tune the pitch out of the gravel. But hey, I could take Ben Affleck's Batman more seriously than the Christian Bale Batman that usually talks like this, where I just have him choking with my throat. Do I look like a cop? So yeah, it could be a little bit distracting. But for Ben Affleck's Batman, it's a good thing that they eventually redeem his character. He actually has those more qualifications, leadership of making the team together. Heck, the movie, it reminded itself that Bruce Wayne, aka Batman, is the one who started this whole team in the first place. So that's a good thing that they eventually developed him even more. And there's some parts in the movie where I'm dang it, I know they're going to start off a brand new Batman with Robert Pattinson as the role and directed by Matt Reeves, but that standalone Ben Affleck Batman movie that was canceled, I'm I actually kind of want to see that, especially for some certain DC characters that are part of the Batman canon. I'm I wish I could see it. Just bring back Ben Affleck as Batman and let Zack Snyder direct, and then boom, restore the Snyderverse. But anyway, let's go on to the next character. Okay, so Wonder Woman, aka the MVPs of the DC Extended Universe ever since her introduction to Batman v Superman. She had a great standalone movie, and then after in this cut, well, the last version, she was definitely most underused, and thanks to Joss Whedon's a little bit fantasy about women, she was definitely used as a sexual joke or a running gag throughout the entire last version. But in this one, they actually really develop her character. It really develops the emotions, but it's really cool that we get that iconic theme. But there's some things where sometimes the theme song can go a little bit annoying. Not the main theme, where it just goes it goes repeat. I'm okay, this is really bothering my eardrums. Stop this. But Wonder Woman is a very great asset to the team from how she tried to convince Cyborg to be a part of it. Same thing that how Wonder Woman is trying to reach every single person on the team, from Superman to even Aquaman. So Wonder Woman is a really good asset. It really developed about the Amazonians, about her world and how much their threat is in danger after Steppenwolf getting the mother boxes. So I say Wonder Woman's a good addition. Anyway, next member, Aquaman. Okay, Aquaman has a lot more screen time than what he's giving in the last cut, besides the iconic quote where he goes, "My man, alright." So Aquaman, he was pretty cool too, but what's so amazing, similar to Wonder Woman, you actually get to see more side characters, including Willem Dafoe's character. I'm still gonna refer him as Green Goblin from the last Spider-Man trilogy. Hello, my dear. And Amber Heard, aka Johnny Depp's ex-wife, not a producer, and still gonna be an Aquaman too. You done them dirty, Warner Brothers. Touche. But besides that, it's really cool that we actually get to see more action sequences with him as Aquaman way before as a standalone character, before he gets to assemble himself in the Justice League team. And I think they really fully fleshed him out in some of the ways. Okay, there's another character that I'm I'm not really sold on his version of this particular comic book character, but I'm just gonna say it's Ezra Miller as the Flash. From the last version of Justice League, I'm he sucks. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm not mad at you. You're just doing your job. You committed to it. It's just that he's not as great as Grant Gustin's Flash from the CW18 TV show. I can take him as the Flash seriously, where the fact that he embodies Barry Allen, he looks like him, he knows how to bring in the comedy whenever it feels accurate and less cringy than Ezra Miller's, and the fact that whenever it needs to be serious, that really needs to narrow him down for his emotions, I think he knows that. But for Ezra Miller's Flash from the last cut, there's more than Flash than just making quippy jokes. Like, don't get me wrong, that is part of his character. He is the combination of Spider-Man and Quicksilver's personality roll into one, and that's what the Flash is. But in the Snyder Cut, there's some scenes I'm like, okay, now we're back to the scenes. But don't worry, there's some certain scenes that where the Flash actually has more development in himself with the character, even sometimes with his dad that's being arrested, which might get recast for the Flashpoint movie. And there's some important story elements I'm like, okay, when it comes to the DC Extended Universe, quote-unquote, rebooting itself, you have the Flash, you have his standalone movie that he's going to team up with two Batmans, Ben Affleck's Batman and Michael Keaton's Batman from the Tim Burton Batman movies, and Flash is the key to restore the DC Extended Universe in a full-on soft rebirth or reboot, if you know what I mean. But yeah, the Flash, he was definitely like more used. He wasn't as stupidly like awkward or cringy to see as a whole, but I'm still not 100% sold as him on the Flash. I mean, he's gonna get a new update soon. It's that I just still prefer Grant Gustin's Flash. So he's more improved in this version, but definitely like not 100% for me to be sold as him by saying, okay, I like you as a Flash, but I think he was alright. But anyway, let's talk about this character that has a huge redemption, and I got more respect for him. It's Ray Fisher's Cyborg. Obviously, he really hated the Joss Whedon theatrical cut, and basically Warner Brothers fired him for after trash talking all the treatments that he really despised in the last cut, and he supported Zack's vision. So Ray Fisher has always been standing up for Zack, and he admitted that the last cut of Justice League was very bad. But in this version, what Zack Snyder said, Cyborg is the heart of the movie, and trust me, back then when Warner Brothers wanted to make a Cyborg standalone movie and they decided to cancel that fast, I think that the Cyborg story for that solo movie is here in the Zack Snyder cut. They fully fleshed out his character and it makes you want to care for him. Sure, the CGI makes be a little bit not too refreshing or refined, but I definitely see that his Cyborg has a really powerful emotional story arc that you just can't help it but just to feel bad for him. But also, as Cyborg himself, he is a great asset to the Justice League team, and that's what he really succeeds at. Like, there's some heart-touching roles that be like, oh no, poor Cyborg, and there's some points I'm like, dang, he's definitely a great MVP player in the Justice League team. He's the quarterback in the football field. That's ironic, according to his origin story. But in a way, I'm so glad that they actually improved Cyborg as a character and the fact that he actually get redeemed, and I'm so sorry if we don't get to see Ray Fisher as Cyborg in future DC movies. Then just be grateful that he actually has a major important role, and why does he matter to the team. So anyway, that's it for Cyborg. Anyway, what about Superman? Okay, back then we know that Henry Cavill had to do Mission Impossible Fallout with Tom Cruise, and he had to do Justice League, right? And they CGI his mustache, so eventually we'll get covered, and the upper lip just looks pretty disgusting and pretty, like, you know, disturbing in a way, if you know what I mean. But for this one, okay, we know I heard criticisms about Henry Cavill Superman. He's not my favorite version, not compared to Christopher Reeve Superman from the old ones. That's my Superman. But for Henry Cavill Superman, in Man of Steel, he was decent, but after that, he just got a little bit more darker, grittier, mopier, and just doesn't care about human life. And then Batman v Superman, they kind of done him a little bit way more worse, where Superman just becomes a little bit more unlikable. And then in the Snyder Cut, they eventually decide to make him, once again, as a joke. And there was some cheesy dialogue from the last version that I'm just being like, what is this? But in this version, where they actually bring some great payoffs from Man of Steel, and yes, even Batman v Superman, including the people that are close to Clark Kent, including, yes, Lois Lane, who's played by Amy Adams, and Martha Kent, where they actually have some small and minor roles that still connects with Superman's death after Batman v Superman. But after when Superman comes back from the dead, it really slows down to the emotions by understanding like why this character doesn't like, he matters so much to the world of Metropolis, but why does he matter of why he is considered to be one of the best comic book characters and DC icons of all time. And they really take their time with that. It's not rushed, it's not shoehorned with any cheesiness or anything. Like, after when Superman got his look, and yes, he does wear the black suit, one of the most important things in the Superman comic book history when it comes to the DC Comics canon, it made me got hope for Henry Cavill Superman again. Like, he really was an amazing asset, and I'm like, okay, Zack, I was a little bit throwing a little bit shade about his version of Superman, but for this one, I'm like, he has potential. So Warner Brothers, don't reboot Superman. Like, Henry Cavill Superman, he has potential to become a great Superman. Depends how the way he's written and the stories that he's been. So if you toss him out of the side, then you just wasted one of your best comic book characters of all time. And I think for his version of Superman in the Snyder Cut, there was so much opportunity with that. So I thought that was pretty awesome. So I'm going to be continuing on with that's it for the Justice League members. Anyway, what about the villains? So, more specifically, Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf was such a joke in the last film, including his awful CGI and where he keeps whining about his mother, like, "Mother is calling, where is my mother?" And they really, truly messed up his character from the last version. Well, in this version, the CGI looks way better. The voice is a little bit more improved. The dialogue is not as horrible or awkward or easy as the last one, but it's definitely more of the typical supervillain type of dialogue. Like, you still get that, but at least the character from his look is way more improved. That's what this whole entire movie is. It's a big improvement from the last version of Justice League that we have. Heck, we even have Darkseid. I won't talk about his character much, but seeing Darkseid in the DC Extended Universe, aka DC's Thanos, the biggest bad, it was really cool of how he really, like, makes a big major plot point connected to the Steppenwolf, the 3 mother boxes, and pretty much the entire plot in this entire story of this movie. And if he's in future DC movies, that'll be awesome, but we'll eventually see. So yeah, that's it for pretty much the villains. Anyway, when it comes to like the DC comic book Easter eggs and references, if you are a hardcore, die-hard DC comic book fan, or just watching the Justice League cartoons in general, you're definitely going to be happy and satisfied with this movie, because this movie goes more better from part 5 to part 6, where I'm like, okay, this feels like a Justice League movie that I'm seeing with my eyes, because the Justice League members during the action sequences, they feel like a team united. Even when they're getting to the biggest obstacles, to the biggest challenges, they help out each other to fight their way back, defend each other, and that's what teamwork is supposed to be. And I think Zack Snyder, in his vision, that's what the Justice League should have been all along. Helping out each other, still sticking together as a team, especially when there's obviously some threats or anything to harm you, just defend each other and just fight back. And that's what this movie really succeeds at. And I really think that's a really smart idea. I'm like saying, okay, I love this, and this is what the Justice League should have been throughout this entire time, and they made a big improvement on that. And another thing, there's a couple of scenes that were like big changes where I'm like, okay, that was unexpected, including the final battle. They completely changed that, and it becomes a little bit more better. The cinematography looks more cinematic and not bland TV budget version, and it definitely brings in like the dark broodiness and the colors that fits the atmosphere of each action sequences, including the music itself with Junkie XL. I think Junkie XL really nails it. I mean, I like his music work in Sonic the Hedgehog and some other comic book movies that he worked with, but for his score, I definitely dig the rock and roll guitar music that goes now, 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 now. I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be awesome. So it's a really cool that some of the music theme, including the new theme song for Justice League, sounds more epic. I mean, no disrespect to Danny Elfman's score from the last version. Love his music in the Spider-Man trilogy and the old Batman movies, honestly, but I just don't think it wasn't as groundbreaking or fresh as Junkie XL's, because Tom Holkenborg, aka Junkie XL, he really nails the music. Including the theme song for the Justice League, it sounds more heroic and cinematic, and I think they really nailed that. Like, it's totally way better than what it is before. And speaking of other DC characters, there's one DC character, if you are a hardcore fan, that he is in the movie, not that much, but he's green and he is from space, and that's all I'm gonna say. But other than that, it was great that he's in there. And speaking of the epilogue, since this movie's 4 hours long, there's all 6 parts that makes you feel satisfied by saying, this is a much better DC Extended Universe movie when it comes to developing the characters, the story, the music, the CGI, the cinematography. That's what this movie is. It's way better than what the original version was. And now for other side characters, yes, I am wearing a Joker t-shirt. Well, it's the Joaquin Phoenix version, but for Jared Leto's Joker, I really wasn't a big fan of his version from Suicide Squad. It was definitely just, it just made me want to throw up. But in this version, this time, Jared Leto's Joker is, I won't give it away because of spoilers, but he's definitely a bigger improvement from the last time I seen him in Suicide Squad. I mean, he still has that laugh, and I'm like, I'm still not sold on it, but his conversation with Ben Affleck's Batman, that's great, because it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Heath Ledger's Joker and the Christian Bale Batman from The Dark Knight, and it definitely reminds me of it. And speaking of the epilogue, I won't give away too much, but the epilogue really sets up by saying, look, if Warner Bros. Is not even thinking of contacting Zack Snyder about the sequels, I'm like, come on! If you see the movie, great, but when the epilogue plays, you're gonna be like, you should do a sequel! That epilogue just screams and demands a sequel that should be made for Justice League 2 and Justice League 3, because yes, they did plan to make a Justice League trilogy. You were going to see more DC villains like Lex Luthor, Deathstroke, the Riddler, so on and so on, and even the Justice League members might have want to go to space in Justice League 2 or 3, so I'm just saying, like, even though back then Zack Snyder did not believe that his cut of Justice League wouldn't came out, but thanks to the fan demand and to the deals that Warner Brothers and HBO Max did, it's possible. So if you guys demand by saying, we want Justice League 2, we want Justice League 3, then it could be possible, because Warner Brothers and DC basically listened to your comments. So congratulations, Zack Snyder, for what you're giving into this movie. Poured your heart and soul for this passion project, for your daughter's passing, including his wife, Deborah Snyder, who eventually just decided to help him out. So I definitely say that they really put all of their effort to making this vision, the director's vision for this 4-hour cut of Justice League, very possible. Is it the best DCEU movie? No. The reason why I say that, because the first act just feels a little bit slower, but the movie got better. If the first act would have been improved, then maybe I would have liked the film more. I just like Shazam more just because I just feel like that's a movie, a DC Extended Universe movie that feels made for me. Is it my favorite DC movie of all time? No, it isn't. It's Batman Forever. Don't judge me. Like, hey, if the Snyder Cut can be revealed, and for Batman Forever, release the Schumacher Cut, please. I want to see the director's vision of Batman Forever. I can make a full video about that if you want me to. But in a way that I'm saying, like, congratulations to Zack Snyder's vision of Justice League, DCU in general. But it definitely says, like, hopefully it has a bigger meaning for the future DC characters like Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and Flash, and maybe a little bit of hope of Batman and Superman as well, unless you're going to reboot the characters. But in a way, I'm satisfied that this movie exists. I think the fans who eventually make this movie possible, and eventually the R-rated, even though there's a little bit of violence and a little bit of cussing in it, this movie was definitely worth seeing and being made. So yeah, that's my review for the Zack Snyder Cut of Justice League. If you haven't seen it yet, go watch on HBO Max. But if you have seen it, what are your thoughts on it? Please, no spoilers in the comments. And I have to say that I finally made this movie review, and thank you guys for watching. Take care now. Bye-bye then.